Good evening, dear friends, and thank you for joining us here at the Blue Lotus Meditation and Mindfulness Center for our bi-weekly guided meditation and Dharma talk. Today is September 29th, 2025. Excuse me. And we are located in central Minnesota in a town called Brainerd, Minnesota. And if you're ever in that area, you're always welcome to come join us and visit and sit with us for as long as you need to. We're delighted to have you with us whenever you can. So it is 6 p.m. now here in the central time zone where we are located. And so just a brief announcement or two before we begin. We do have our YouTube channel memberships which you may subscribe to. You can get some behind the scenes information. Actually, we have our information as well as, some early release videos and whatnot. But we do have there's a lot going on this week behind the scenes with the channel and some organization and so forth. And so maybe you have already noticed some of those changes, but yeah, you can see what's going on as we reevaluate and re-edit and so forth and update a lot of the videos and so forth. Additionally, we also have youth programs. Sometimes I, really wish I had a youth program for meditation and mindfulness back in, when I was in middle school and high school and so forth. And so we do have youth programs all throughout the world. So if your child is involved, which I would think they probably are if you're watching this, right? That are involved in the Dharma and mindfulness and meditation, and maybe they have some friends that would like to practice and learn more as well. We do have youth programs, and so throughout the world, and perhaps if there's not one located near you, you can start a chapter on your own, and we'd be more than happy to help you initiate that with your educational institution and so forth. And there's no charge to, for our youth programs, for our youngsters to practice mindfulness and meditation. And again, like I said, I wish I had and even knew about this when I was younger and growing up. It certainly would have eased a lot of suffering of mine during those very critical and impressionable formative years. And so if a youth program may be right for you, or your child, I should say, or you could be a youngster watching this, absolutely. And so let's begin with the 3 jewels. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Sathu, Sathu, Sathu. Very nice. So tonight's topic is, I've been looking forward to this one. I look forward to them all, but I like this one because it reminded me of I got the inspiration from a lyric, from a musical song about the Buddha, about becoming radiant and glorious like the morning or the rising sun. And so I think too often in our society that we get bogged down in details and the many distractions that we face. And so that's why I came up with becoming radiant and glorious like the morning sun. And so to help promote that and to keep in line with our format, let's do our guided meditation, which coincidentally happens to be called Becoming Radiant and Glorious. And so let's begin by taking a moment to settle our bodies into that comfortable position. You may close your eyes or keep them slightly open with a soft focus looking downward, a few feet in front of you if you choose. Breathe in. Pause and breathe out. And you're invited to allow a half smile to rest on your face as well. Lift your spine and allow your shoulders to soften. And soften your belly as you continue settling in. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. And let's shift our mindset and meditate on becoming radiant and glorious. Go ahead and bring gentle awareness to your breathing. Natural, effortless, simply flowing in and out. With each inhale, imagine drawing in a freshness, light, and renewal. And with each exhale, releasing tension, heaviness, and any self-doubt. Letting the breath be your anchor, steady and calm. Go ahead and place your attention at the center of your chest, your heart space. And imagine a small, warm glow of light shining there, gentle but steady. And with every inhale, this light grows brighter. And with every exhale, the light expands outward, filling your entire body. See your face, your hands, your entire being glowing like the morning sun, radiant, peaceful, and glorious. And feel this light as your true nature, luminous awareness, free and loving. Allow this radiant light to extend beyond your body, letting it shine gently on those around you, family, friends, strangers, even those you find difficult. And just as the sun shines on all without judgment, your inner light touches everyone equally. Sense the joy of giving warmth, peace, and kindness simply by being radiant. and rest quietly in this radiant, knowing it is always within you. And when you're ready, go ahead and begin to open your eyes slowly and to orientate yourself to your surroundings before you move around. Sunrises are beautiful, aren't they? If it's been a while since you've had the opportunity to experience a sunrise, I would absolutely recommend it. It doesn't matter where you are, right? There's always a beautiful sunrise. Whether you're in the forest someplace or in the countryside or even in the cities, right? You can always watch the sunrise coming up, the shadows starting to get long, the colors of the sky, like those pink, soft cotton candies and the blues and purples sometimes, the reds, very soft colors. Right? And how beautiful is that? Those soft colors are very, very pretty. We can think about how those soft colors perhaps reflect us, right? The softness that we can have. Man, that as the sun rises, right, as um, it gets rid of the darkness, right? Certainly, we know why. In these modern times with the rotation of Earth and so forth, but watching it go from darkness to the very sliver, those beautiful little slivers of sunlight, watching the stars start to disappear and, being overtaken by those soft colors is always very, very beautiful, right? And bringing about warmth and the activity that goes along with the sunrise. And like our hearts and minds, we too have this capacity to shine with clarity, compassion, and wisdom. Right? So think about that. Clarity, compassion, and wisdom. We have those innate within us. And we can see certainly a lot of compassion when we even look at small children, right? They may not be too wise at that age, touching things that, perhaps could cause them harm, but they certainly have compassion. That's an innate emotion that we all have. And um, unfortunately, a lot of times our societies where we live suppresses that. And that does not allow us to see with clarity and does not allow us to always act with wisdom. So we need to redirect our efforts to becoming radiant and glorious, just like that morning sun. So we can think about that. How can we become radiant? How can we become radiant and glorious like the morning sun? We don't want to become radius. We're not a circle. Although we can come around full circle, right? But that just puts us back where we are. So we don't want to become radius, right? We want to become radiant. But what is radiant, right? What is that nature of radiant? And so that quality that we're looking for. And so in Buddhism, true radiance comes from these inner qualities, not external, inner qualities. And radiance that we are nurturing and developing is expressed through kindness, equanimity, compassion, and wisdom. So think about that kindness. That's a quality that we have within us. Right? Compassion, absolutely, again, right? Again, thinking of children, right? They're very compassionate. golly, even, cats and dogs are compassionate. If they see somebody, their owners or their friends, suffering, they go to try to comfort them. Compassion is a quality that all sentient beings have, even ants. Maybe you've seen some ants sometimes get hurt and other ants, come around them to try to help. And so we have those qualities of kindness and equanimity, is maintaining a balance about us, right? And wisdom, so that we can make wholesome decisions that are not hurtful to others, right? That lead to the best potential outcome, right? And so, like the sun, right? And it is natural for us to shine in those efforts, right? But a lot of times our societies dictate otherwise, right? They present clouds, right? If we think about that, right? It's our natural, innate desire, qualities to shine. But sometimes man-made societies, right? Offer what we'll just call clouds, right? To obscurate those qualities, things like delusion, anger, and greed, right? They certainly can cover our light, but if we are observant, we can see how anger and greed, right, and fear too, right, lend a hand to increasing delusion and suffering and just a lot of pain and unnecessary situations worldwide, not just even internal, right? But, that we can see on the outside. And that may cover our light, because sometimes if we're not mindful, that can, we can begin to nurture our own clouds. So we have to be very mindful and in what we do and how we do it and what we say, so that we develop and continue nurturing kindness and equanimity and compassion towards ourselves and to others, all others. And so this practice is not about creating something new. We have that within us. It's already within us, right? But it's about uncovering what is already there. See, the clouds, when they come in, right, they just block the sun. The sun hasn't gone anywhere, right? It's still there. We're just not able to see it clearly. Excuse me. So we have to nurture ways for clearing up these clouds, pushing them out of the way, overcoming these obscurations or obstacles, these hindrances, this veil of negative qualities that prevent us from becoming radiant and glorious like that morning sun. So in anger, right, letting go of resentment, right, allows compassion to shine. So sometimes we see a lot of people raising their voices, and we at times have perhaps raised our voices as well. Even perhaps on the mindfulness path that you are on, you have raised your voice. But I would be willing to suspect that more advanced that you are on this path, the less anger you have within, right? And you certainly don't reflect that anger if you do feel it at times, towards somebody else, especially someone that we care deeply about. So we let go of resentment, right? Which allows compassion within us to shine, right? Being happy for others, for example, right? If something doesn't go our way, right? Letting it go. If you didn't get that promotion, if you didn't get that raise, or if you asked out, this most beautiful person in the world that you thought, and they said no, right? No reason to get angry. right? Everybody likes what they like in that sense. Greed, right? That in our societies are overflowing with greed, right? And so releasing that endless wanting just creates contentment of joy. How often do we hear that you have to have more to be happy? More and more and more. More can never stop. More is infinite. If you're familiar with mathematics, right? It's got that infinity sign, right? It looks like a sideways 8. More will just never, ever cease. And so learning to be happy with what we have in the present moment, even if it is just a little. And I'm always reminded of seeing, economically challenged families and children especially, who are always very happy just to be with their families. Perhaps when you were younger, maybe you got a big box and you were happy with just playing with a big box. It didn't have to be, the latest and the greatest, video game system. You were simply happy with a box, maybe some sticks, making some stick figures. I don't know. Right. But just releasing that endless wanting that society often dictates and promotes as success really eliminates, that emotion of greed, right? And the delusions, right? So seeing clearly removes confusion and doubt. So we have to take a step back, right? And truly examine what we're seeing and what we are experiencing, both externally and internally. Because a lot of times what we see when we see the angry person, for example, screaming on television, saying what's right for you, what's wrong about somebody else, right? You're not seeing them. You're seeing what they want you to see. And so that anger that they project, offers a delusion towards you. Like you can identify with them. I promise you that you are much more kind and compassionate within, and you can let that out. That will help you see clearly. And mindfulness and meditation, those are simply the tools that we certainly promote and need to practice, right? To notice those clouds and letting them pass. A very good practice that you can use to visualize removing some of this anger or greed or self-doubt or any negative emotion. Just close your eyes and envision that hurtful emotion, greed, lust, jealousy, whatever it is, right? Envision it as that storm cloud, right? Thunder, lightning, right? Very loud and very noisy. But then visualize a very gentle breeze. Doesn't even have to be very strong, right? Just a gentle breeze blowing that cloud away. And you'll find that emotion dissipates rather quickly. Right? We don't want to do things very harshly and abruptly, right? That's why we do them mindfully with compassion and gentleness. Gentleness will always win over harshness. Always. Harshness is very hurtful and painful. Gentleness is soft and compassionate. And so that's what we're going to cultivate, right? Cultivating those radiant qualities that we need so that we may become glorious, like that morning sun. And the first one certainly is loving kindness, or metta with 2 T's, right? Shining warmth on all beings without discrimination. So think about that. Without discrimination, warmth and light, right? Towards all beings. So all beings doesn't just mean the people that we adore and admire or respect, but it also means the other ones that perhaps rub us the wrong way, say things that they should not say, behave in manners that are hurtful towards others. And sometimes that's very hard to do, right? Practicing loving kindness towards the ones that we find difficult and hurtful. And compassion, right? So bringing healing light, right, to those suffering. When someone is angry or they're filled with greed, they're suffering. Absolutely. And so we don't want to treat them poorly because that just promotes more suffering. Right? Remember, the Buddha tells us, right? You're not going to dispel hate with more hate. You're going to dispel hate with love and compassion. So we need to open our Buddha hearts, our Dharma hearts, so that love and compassion, right, radiate outwards, just like in that guided meditation. And sympathetic joy, right? Rejoicing in the success and happiness of others, as if it were your own. Be happy for someone. Don't be petty. Don't be jealous. Right? Don't be miserly in that sense. Right? Having that boundless compassion and loving kindness towards all. And again, that means being happy for someone else's success, even if you don't like them. Right? They may be your office nemesis, right? But if they get a promotion, be happy for them because they still have, needs and wants and desires, even if they may not necessarily be a joy to be around all the time. But we can still be joyful in their accomplishments as if they are our own. And then practicing equanimity, right? That steady glow, shining equally without preference for all, right? Maintaining that balance. Right? That's important. Maintaining that balance of mindfulness actions, right? Not too far off in one direction, not too far off in another direction. Maintaining that, just a gentle smile throughout all of our actions, that steady glow, right? And again, practicing these qualities daily will make you luminous in presence, in character. Because remember, when you're radiant and glorious, right? You're a role model to someone else, right? People see that and they know that. They notate that. And perhaps, just perhaps, you start rubbing off on them a little bit and their suffering begins to ease a bit. So living like that morning sun, right? Again, remembering that the sun rises without hesitation, right? So practice daily, right? Practice showing up fully in each moment. And what does that mean, right? Not half-heartedly, not dragging and kicking your feet, dragging your heels, right? And remember the sun gives freely, right? Embody generosity without expectation. Sometimes that's hard, right? We live in such a society that when we give something or we do something for someone else, we expect something in return. As mindfulness practitioners, we understand that giving, right, generosity is its own reward. That is how we earn, one way how we earn merit, right? So without expecting anything in return from this other person, they may not be able to provide, or reciprocate. And remember, the sun shines on everyone without judgment, right? Embody inclusiveness and non-discrimination, right? A lot of times we make judgments just based on how somebody looks or how they're dressed, their sexual identity, whether they're male or female, right? Whether they're tall or short, thin or overweight, right? A lot of times we make judgments without knowing anything about that other person. But the sun doesn't do that. The sun shines on everyone without discrimination. And that's why we have to practice, right, the way that we do, with compassion and empathy and equanimity and loving kindness, right, towards everyone. And certainly remember that even in those busy times that we all face, and certainly those difficult times, right, remember that even small acts of kindness and mindfulness radiate outwards. Oftentimes we don't know what somebody else is feeling. Even if it's our most intimate partner, we never truly know what somebody else is thinking. So it's important that we always radiate joy, positivity, uplifting behaviors towards someone else. And so what are some steps that we can take? Right? Beginning each day with gratitude for ourselves. We can say to ourselves, may I shine like the sun for the benefit of all. Right? So think about that. All the bodhicittas that are out there, or the bodhisattvas, right? Infinite compassion, infinite empathy towards all living beings. It's a practice that we can all try, right? And being grateful. Excuse me. And short daily meditations, right? Simply visualizing our heart as the sun, radiating light in all directions towards everyone, right? Without discrimination. All beings need love and compassion. It's how a well-nurtured person develops. And so even the ones that we find that are angry and crass and rough, right? Certainly offering them love and compassion, that warmth, and speaking kind words that uplift, just as that sun uplifts the earth, removes that darkness, brings forth life. So it's important that we generate and promote that as well, our kind words. Remember, that's also one of the steps or the attributes of that noble eightfold path, right? Right speech. And serving others in simple ways, simply a smile, listening ear, a helping hand, whatever it is, can certainly change someone's day for the better, right? And that's what we're here for. People often ask, what is my purpose in life, right? And looking for some very deep existential question, right? The purpose for anyone is to offer kindness and compassion towards others. How you go about doing that is up to you. Doesn't matter whether you're a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, or you sell fabrics or you sell electronics, right? Or you're a teacher, or even if you're homeless, right? Our purpose is to offer someone compassion and empathy. And that's the purpose of everyone's life. And so remembering about ourselves that the sun itself, it doesn't struggle to shine, right? It simply does, right? So sometimes we may find it hard to be compassionate towards others or non-discriminatory towards others, but reflect on why we're being that way. And think of the sun. Sun doesn't discriminate, right? It doesn't struggle to shine. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. It's like any other skill. Crocheting or knitting, right? Right? If you don't practice that skill, you will not develop your crochet technique, your knit one, purl two. I think. I don't know. I'm not a crocheter or a knitter. My grandmother was, and she tried when I was younger to try to teach me. So in the same way, right, our practice is about uncovering, right, our own natural radiance. And so when we practice, right, being radiant and glorious, right, remember we're developing ourselves. We're not uncovering something new. Now, all these emotions, all these qualities that we've talked about are already innately within you. So it's just about uncovering and developing them. Just like crocheting or knitting. And so I would ask you to just, give this a try. Make it a practice, right? And say to yourselves, may you walk the path in such a way that your presence brings warmth, joy, and clarity, radiant and glorious like the morning sun to all living beings. You can do this. Right? We don't have to have grandiose actions to change and to help others. Because when we help others, we help ourselves. When we help others, we are truly helping ourselves. So our next talk seems like so far away. I know it's the end of September, but it won't be until October 13th. And keeping along in these lines of radiant and glorious, our next talk is titled The Arrows of Compassion, Stronger Than Mountains. Right? Certainly thinking about mountains are very strong and steadfast, unbreaking, right? But our arrows of compassion are much stronger than the mountains that we see. And so we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, right? 6 p.m. on the Central Time Zone. And if you're watching this on the replay, we are delighted to have you. Delighted that you are sitting with us for these important, nurturing, and developmental Dharma talks. How we can, help ourselves and help others. And with that, we will see you in 2 weeks. And so thank you for coming, and we wish you many warm blessings.